Cops mock a black man in court, unaware he's actually the director of the FBI. Before we dive into this incredible story, be sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's get into it. It all started with a low chuckle, sharp, dismissive, and filled with disbelief. "Look at this guy," Officer Jensen whispered, nudging his partner. As the tall black man in the sleek, perfectly tailored charcoal suit walked into the courtroom, Jensen smirked. "Sad bet. He's just one of those smooth-talking public defenders who think they can outweed the system." But the man didn't flinch. He didn't even look their way. His presence was calm, steady. He carried himself with a quiet dignity, walking with purpose and an undeniable strength. With his back straight and his stride firm, he nodded respectfully toward the judge before taking a seat in the gallery, third row from the front. To the officers, he was just another face in the crowd, another black man strolling into a courtroom. They saw his skin first, before they even saw the man himself. And that, right there, was their first mistake. Outside, the media buzzed with reports on the case. Darius Mitchell, a young black college student, had been arrested 2 months ago on charges of resisting arrest and assaulting a police officer. However, the body camera footage had mysteriously vanished and witnesses couldn't agree on what had really happened. Yet, Officers Jensen and Burke stood firm, sticking to their story. The young man had been aggressive, threatening, even violent. Inside the courtroom, there was a tension that could almost be felt in the air, thick and palpable. It was as though everyone present knew something big was about to happen, something much bigger than just one trial. As the prosecution laid out its case, the two officers sat smugly behind their lawyer, exchanging glances. Officer Burke kept stealing looks at the man in the suit sitting in the gallery, whispering something to Jensen. Another suppressed laugh escaped. "What's he doing here?" Burke sneered. "Probably just some family member trying to look important." But they didn't notice the subtle exchange of nods between the judge and the suited man. They didn't catch the respectful nods from court officers as he passed. They missed the brief hesitation from the ADA as she took notice of him sitting in the audience. The man remained silent, simply observing, his presence speaking volumes. Meanwhile, Darius sat beside his public defender, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He looked worn out, exhausted not only physically but emotionally, as if the fight had been drained from him long before this moment. His mother sat right behind him, her hands trembling as she muttered quiet prayers under her breath, the weight of everything pressing down on her. The defense made its case. Darius had been walking home from a friend's place when the officers had approached. He had his earbuds in, so he didn't hear them calling out to him. When he finally noticed them coming up quickly, weapons holstered but their hands near them, he panicked, like any young black man in America might. He raised his hands. He told them he was unarmed. But still, they tackled him, forcefully throwing him to the ground. Officer Burke, taking the stand, recounted it with theatrical conviction. "We feared for our safety." But there were no bruises on the officers, no medical records to back up their claims, just paperwork and an all-too-familiar story. Then, the defense rested, and the judge called a brief recess before the closing arguments. And that's when everything changed. The man in the suit stood up. He stepped forward, moving past the attorneys and the stunned defendant, making his way to the front of the courtroom. Stopping just in front of the bench, he spoke, his voice smooth and calm. "Your Honor," he said, "if I may address the court briefly." The judge, a slight smile flickering across his face, straightened up. "Of course, Director Hayes. You have the floor." The room shifted, a palpable ripple of surprise spreading through the courtroom. "Director? Hayes." Officer Jensen stiffened. "What the hell?" he muttered under his breath. The man slowly turned, addressing the entire courtroom. "My name is Malcolm Hayes, and I am the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Gasps filled the gallery. One woman even covered her mouth in disbelief. Darius's mother, who had been on the edge of tears all day, nearly dropped her purse in shock. Hayes continued, his voice unwavering, yet full of resolve. "I didn't come here as the head of the FBI. I came as a black man in America. I'm here because I read this case file, and I saw a story I'm all too familiar with. I saw a young man criminalized for the color of his skin. I saw missing footage. I saw contradictions. But most of all, I saw two officers who failed to see the human being in front of them. He paused, looking directly at Officers Jensen and Burke, his gaze unflinching. I've been stopped too. I've been followed in stores. I've had guns drawn on me while jogging in my own neighborhood. The only difference between me and Darius Mitchell is the suit and the title I carry. Silence hung in the air. Not a single sound could be heard in that moment. And I want you to think about what that says, Hayes continued. If the man you mocked today had been wearing a hoodie instead of a suit, you would have dismissed him without a second thought. And that's exactly what you did to Darius. He turned to the judge, his voice softening. Your Honor, I will not interfere with your ruling, but I ask the court to consider the pattern here. This is not about one isolated night. This is about a system that too often mistakes presence for guilt and skin for threat. Turning back to Darius, he softened even more, his tone gentle. You're not invisible, son. You matter, and you are not alone. The courtroom was still, utterly still. No one dared to laugh now. Officer Burke clenched his jaw. Jensen, avoiding eye contact, seemed to suddenly find the courtroom tiles fascinating. It didn't take the jury long to deliberate, just under 2 hours. The verdict? Not guilty. Outside, reporters flooded the courthouse. The news had already gone viral. FBI director shocks courtroom during trial of black teen. Video clips of Hayes' speech were spreading faster than news anchors could narrate them. But Director Hayes didn't stick around for interviews. Instead, he found Darius and his mother standing outside, overwhelmed and uncertain. Thank you, sir, Darius said softly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. You didn't have to do that. Actually, I did, Hayes replied. Because one day, it'll be your turn to do this for someone else. That evening, Officer Jensen handed in his badge. He didn't say much, just walked into the precinct, dropped it on the desk, and walked out. Officer Burke was placed on administrative leave pending further review, though the mayor's office had already issued a statement expressing deep concerns about systemic failures in policing. The next morning, Director Hayes returned to Washington. He sat at his desk in his office, staring out the window at the bustling city below, his thoughts heavy. He reflected on the quiet battles he'd fought his entire life, the times he had to bite his tongue, clench his jaw, and bury his anger. And for once, just once, he hadn't stayed silent. Respect should never be defined by someone's appearance. Justice should never depend on titles. And the value of a person should never be judged by the color of their skin. Not everyone in that courtroom walked away changed, but some did. And sometimes, that's all it takes to spark change. In a world where judgment often precedes understanding, one man's presence was enough to shake the very system. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, remember, sometimes the quietest voices carry the loudest truths.